this has been a really, really incredible experience so far. And I know a lot of you kind of big up the time that it is to come here, but this is truly, I think, as Jess mentioned, a total privilege. I would do anything at the drop of a hat for Stacy, but also for everyone in this room. So it's really an honor to be here. We are going to talk about social media. Far less tugging at the heartstrings and confidence, but hopefully you can get some good tools from this. So first, I'll tell you guys a little bit about me. As Stacy mentioned, I run an agency called Matte Black. We're based in Los Angeles. We also have a footprint in London. We work with lifestyle brands globally on their marketing strategies as a whole. Social media is kind of the heartbeat of a lot of what we do, but we do really look at a brand's overall positioning in the digital landscape and help them achieve whatever their goals are. A lot of times it's sales. So that's definitely kind of a big piece of our strategies and our thinking and pretty much everything that we do. I also started a media platform. It's a web-based magazine called the Shapeshift Report. It would be a really great tool for you guys. It's got a lot of great insights about marketing and social and culture and people and just the creatively curious in general. So I'd highly recommend you guys check that out. And that's enough for my shameless plug of self-promotion. So the first thing that I like to do, oops, I don't know if that is me or not. Okay, let's do this again. Me again. Hi again. Okay, so this is a question that I think is a good one to think about for a few reasons. If a person or a brand were to just give you all of their followers, who would it be? And it doesn't have to be one person. You could think of a list. But what it tells you is a few things. One, it helps you kind of benchmark some goals that you might have in mind for your social media. You have to ask yourself why. Why do I want their followers? Who are those people? Why do I feel like they're relevant to me or my brand? It also is an amazing minefield of people that you could try to connect with and engage with on social. If there is another accessory brand, for example, that you feel like has the audience that you want to achieve, digging into those followers and checking out who they are and what kind of glimpses you can take from what they post about, what they share, what they talk about, what age are they, is it predominantly female, all sorts of insights will actually give you cues as to who your target audience is and who you might set out to achieve in social and otherwise. I think also one of the beauties of social media is that it's kind of a free game for everyone. People have profiles, for the most part they're public, and you have the opportunity to connect and have conversations with anyone, anywhere in the world at any time. It's incredibly powerful. So this is an amazingly cool opportunity for you to find people to connect with, to take cues from what that brand is doing or that person is doing that you might want to apply to your own social media strategies, whether that is what their tone of voice sounds like, what kind of content they're posting. Is it predominantly photos of product? Is it behind the scenes photos of what they're doing? Is it photos of their family? What is getting the highest engagement? And how can you kind of take some of that insight and apply it to your own brand? That might be a little small up there, but 4 questions to ask yourself. Why am I using social media? Biggie. You definitely want to understand why. I think that there is generally a forced feeling that I need to be on social media because that's what people do. That's how you succeed, that's how you market today, and this is what is going to be required of me for my brand. And truthfully, there is some reality in that, but it's not everything. There are so many funnels in marketing. Social media is one of them. You kind of need to tap into a lot of different things to figure out what's going to work for you and your brand and your audience. Social media just happens to be a really powerful way to connect with just about anyone and talk to them as much as you want. These people are opting in to hear from you whenever you feel like talking to them, and that is amazing. So you need to figure out, why am I using it? Am I using it to drive sales? Am I using it to build community? Am I trying to have more people know that I have a blog? Am I trying to push a sale, a promotion, an event? Just think about those things, relatively obvious. What benefits do I hope to derive? Kind of some of those same cues as before. But it could just be that you're trying to cultivate and hear from your customers more. That could be one of your kind of main points of focus for social media, which would be really powerful. How will a specific network help me achieve that objective? So one of the biggest things I always like to say is you don't have to be everything to everyone, and not every network is going to be there for you. So ultimately, you need to figure out what you're looking to get out of social media to determine what networks are going to be the most fruitful for your time. Anyone out there who's doing social media for their brand right now understands that it's hugely time consuming. And that is why a lot of people put it on a shelf. They say they don't understand it. They decide to kind of turn a shoulder to it, and then it ends up being this thing that they feel daunted by all the time. And I totally get it, because it's a huge time commitment for sure. So ultimately what it would be like is asking yourself which one of these networks, or two of these networks, or whatever it is going to be the most worth my time investment, because I'm going to cultivate those communities and make it work for me before I start tapping into another one. And we're going to go through all the networks kind of from like a high level. This is my POV in a second, so you might get some cues from that as to what might be the right channels for you. A little typo here too, but how will you track success, or what will you do to track success, is super important. I don't expect anyone to become deep in the data of social media. I'm sure most of the people in this room have a lot on their plate and are juggling a lot of different elements of their brand or business or personal life. But it is important to understand what you're going to look at to determine whether or not it was worth your time. Again, that could be a sale, but to kind of speak to Jess, specifics are super important. If you're like, I want to drive more sales for my brand, how much in sales, at what rate per month, and how are you going to achieve success? And maybe set some low goals to start with, but you need to know how you're going to be able to understand if social media is working for you. Otherwise, again, you're going to get super fatigued, and you're going to just kind of be like, this ain't my thing. So, as we think those things through, we'll start with social network. So Facebook. I feel like most people here are using Facebook pretty actively. Is that correct? Yeah. Cool. It's massive. 1.5 billion users and growing, for sure. The reality of Facebook right now, and it might not be as relevant here because there seems to be such an amazing, close-knit community of people, but if you're in Los Angeles or otherwise, or if you're just even looking to tap into national visibility for your brand, which hopefully all of you are, the reality of Facebook is that it is a paid channel. It's not an organic channel. It used to be, I've been doing social media for a long time, and Facebook used to be where we funneled all of our time and energy, and you got tons of comments and lots of likes and all the shares and all that stuff, and then all of a sudden, over the last few years, you're like, hello? Like, is anybody there? Where are the people? It became this really tough network to crack because of an algorithm, which I'll explain kind of loosely because that goes a little too deep. But ultimately, it's become really challenging for brands. Even those who've cultivated the last few years, building millions of fans, they're talking to a tiny amount of people on a daily basis because you do really need to put some spend behind it. And I'll talk about that in a minute as well. Facebook. Video reigns supreme for Facebook. They are putting all of their time and energy into pushing out video content. So have many of you guys played with Facebook Live? Raise your hand if you've done Facebook Live at all. Cool, a decent amount of you. So Facebook Live is like the darling of Facebook right now. They want everybody using Facebook Live, whether it's you walking through a grocery store or it's your brand doing something really interesting like a Q&A with somebody. That is a piece of content that Facebook is going to weigh as heavy. So that means that they're going to push it out. If you have 500 fans on Facebook, they're going to push that out to as many of your fans as are online or online in the next 24 hours as possible. So it needs to be holistic to you and your brand, where you have a reason to talk to people through Facebook Live or to leverage that. But it is a good it's a good thing to kind of put in your pocket to know that, like, if you're really trying to reach as many of your audience that you've been spending a lot of time cultivating, live video or any form of video is going to do that the most. Facebook is a great traffic driver. So most of social media to some extent is about driving people off platform, at least in terms of the goal of brands and individuals, whether you're trying to drive people to your e-commerce site or push ticket sales for something or drive them to your blog. A lot of time we're kind of hopping people through different web platforms. And social media tends to be a driver for that. Facebook is very good at that. Again, it really is kind of about putting some spend behind something that you really want to drive a lot of eyeballs to. But it's super powerful, and that's why a lot of brands use it to basically push sales and do all the things that they're looking to kind of hit their KPIs and the ROI on. So another thing with Facebook, in general, I always get asked the question, how many times should I post a day or a week or whatever? Social media has changed so much in the last few years that ultimately your post frequency is kind of down to your analytics to some extent. I would say that it is good to think about being prepared to post once a day, but that can be hard for people and brands to a large extent who don't really have like the wheelhouse of content to push out a ton or feel like they have enough to talk about. Facebook is one of those platforms where ultimately you should really just post when you have something to say. It's not, I mean, we've had clients that we work with, big brands, who have been posting 1-2 times a day, and when we scaled them down to 3 to 4 times a week, they saw way greater return on that, whether it's through the engagement, through people actually clicking through on posts to go to their website. There's no formula to it. It's not like it's like a recipe, but it's all about testing. Social media in general is all about testing. It is the wild, wild west. It has been since the day it launched. It still is today. It changes every hour. It is hard to keep up, but ultimately you just have to keep track of what you're doing, what's working, and how you can apply that insight to what you're doing going forward. Understanding the algorithm, as I mentioned before, this is essentially an algorithm in social media is something that controls why your content gets pushed out. So in our minds, we're like, oh, cool, I have 1,000 followers. All 1,000 people of those should be seeing everything I post because they follow me. That's not the case. We all know that. And it's basically down to 4 key things. One is kind of the weight of your content. So when we say like weight, it kind of means like how heavily does that social channel consider that to be an important piece of content. So let's say, for example, I love posting cat photos. I don't, but just for, you know, for case study's sake, I love posting cat photos, and every time I post a cat photo, I get a ton of likes, and a bunch of people comment, and it's like, it's awesome. Facebook or Instagram or any of these platforms will see that and be like, oh, cool, when she posts cat photos, people like it. So therefore, we're gonna feed it out to more people. When I post a dog photo, I don't get a lot of likes and comments. So they're gonna kind of be like, people don't like this as much, we're gonna hold it back. So that's one of the things. Another thing is what's called time decay. So ultimately, and many of you probably see this, especially on Facebook, sometimes you'll hop online and you'll see a post that somebody posted 12 hours ago. Same thing applied to Instagram. The reasoning for that is, again, they said, the algorithm said, Chelsea really likes cat photos, and so Stacy posted a cat photo, but it was while I was asleep, but now I'm online again, we're gonna make sure she sees that cat photo. So that's really how it works, and that is a big piece of the algorithm. And the third piece of it is just negative feedback, which hopefully nobody ever has to deal with in this room. But if anyone was to ever flag a piece of your content as inappropriate or block you as a user or anything like that, then those networks are going to kind of say like, they're getting dinged, and therefore we're going to make sure that they don't get out to as many people. So that's really it. And that's kind of just things to think about, especially when you're paying attention to how your content is performing on Facebook, on Instagram, any channel. Just looking at like what tends to get the most likes, what gets the most comments, and how can I take that intel and apply it to my future content. Here's an example of a brand called Madewell, which is owned by J. Crew. I don't know if Madewell's out here, but just a good example of something that is effective on Facebook. So you can see the copy is kind of quirky, so it's PSA, public service announcement. Our central shirt is back, you know what to do. It's short and sweet. Long captions on Facebook tend to get people lost. They're scanning through their feeds really quickly on pretty much every platform. And so you kind of need to keep it short, sweet, and eye-catching. The visual is what's going to do the eye-catching. The copy is what's going to kind of pull somebody into an action. Then you'll see here that there is a link. It's a trackable link. So what that means is just that that brand can track how many people clicked on it. And there is an amazing free site for this called bit.ly, bitly.com. And all you ever have to do is just drop your link into there, click shorten, and then it shortens the link so it kind of looks like something like that. And then you can see how many people click on it. So sometimes you might post something on a social network and you're like, oh, I got 5 likes and nobody commented on it. But if you go back and look and see how many people clicked on the link, it might be 25 people. It might be more than that, it might be less, doesn't matter. But that's action that is actually driving back to your goals. Those 25 people, of one of them might actually end up buying something. So that's rad, that's what you want. So that's an example. If I apply it to something locally, Pika has been so lovely to take me all around the island. She literally gave me a tour of the entire island yesterday, which was like absolute magic. I would say that this is a great local example of a well-crafted Facebook post. It's kind of fun, like you get a tone of voice, right? Healthy, yep, we got that too. There's a little bit of slang in there. It's very casual. You get a sensibility of what this cafe is like, what the people there are like. You also get a sense of the kind of food. This is a well-taken photo. It looks appetizing, and it's fun. And so I think that that's really kind of what people are interested in seeing, especially from brands on social media. If she was an e-commerce brand and she was selling salads online, I would tell her she should put a link in there. But you could put a link in so that people can see what your hours are, where your location is, use it a little bit further to be able to actually give people a little bit more action, again, from that post. Instagram. Okay, how many people are on Instagram? Oh, good. Okay. Well, everyone's hand should be up if you were listening to Stacey. So Instagram truly is the darling social media channel. I think Snapchat, are any of you on Snapchat? I had to take out the Snapchat portion of my presentation. Normally I'm like, that's going to be, it's not going to go down. So Instagram truly is the darling, I think, of social media and has been for several years now. It definitely turned the marketing world on its head in terms of the demand for well-curated, well-produced content. And that is part of what led to the success of my business, was being able to speak to that and create that kind of content. But ultimately, Instagram is a massive platform. 400 million users, and this is actually even a bit outdated. I would say it's probably closer to 600 million at this point. It is owned by Facebook, so there are a lot of Facebook's elements that are coming through, such as that algorithm I talked about, which is now why when you open Instagram, sometimes you see a post that's 18 hours old. It's because Instagram is saying, we think you're going to like this, we know you like content from this person or this brand, or we know you like this kind of content in general. Instagram stories and Instagram Live, are you guys using that much? No? Okay, cool, yeah, make me live. So this was basically Instagram's approach to being like, bye-bye Snapchat, get out of our playing field. But really it is kind of the new frontier of Instagram. Again, as I mentioned before, social media landscape is constantly changing and it's constantly turning strategies and ideas on its head. Instagram Stories and Instagram Live has done that very much so by taking what was the ethos of Instagram as like this beautiful, well-curated platform into something that is now creating more real, holistic, unfiltered content, and that's what people actually like to see. They like to view things as a story. So, you know, an Instagram post, for example, might be a well thought out, well curated post that you do once a day, once every couple of days, totally fine. Instagram Stories is like, I'm here, I'm doing this, I don't care what it looks like, you just need to know what I'm up to. And it just feels like people are along for the ride in your day. So it is a different kind of social media strategy and a different programmatic approach to what you do. But ultimately, it's making everything a lot easier because you don't have to feel like everything has to be so perfect and curated, which is definitely something that is a daunting element of Instagram if you don't have the prowess and the ability to create the kind of content that Instagram is kind of housed for per se. As I mentioned before, post frequency, I feel like posting frequency should really be something that you don't worry about too much. Ultimately, if people like your content, they are going to see it in one way, shape, or another. If you feel like you're saying something because you have to, because I have to fit that daily quota of a post in, you're basically not going to put out your best work. So it's really more about figuring out what your cadence is, what makes sense for you, how much do you have to talk about, what's going to be valuable to the people who are following you, and let that drive your cadence. And if it ends up being 2 times a week, that's fine. You can build up as you start to get into a really good rhythm. Engagement on Instagram is super easy. You can hop through and like as many people's photos, comment on as many people's things. You can follow people's stories as much as you want. I mean, it's really kind of like a free-for-all. So I highly suggest that if Instagram is a platform that you're looking to really nurture, just get in there and get engaged with people. Social media is meant to be social. So if you're someone who's kind of like a little bit more insular and you don't really feel like you want to comment on other people's content or kind of connect with people in a social environment, that's totally okay, but maybe you should think about putting someone in the position to do that for you so that you can focus on the things that you actually feel are really your strengths. And this kind of comes from our kind of internal theory of growth, or our tactics is called the mine and grind. I know that sounds a little bit perverse, but it really is that. With a platform like Instagram, and Twitter kind of operates the same way, you can go into like the Instagram rabbit hole. Have you guys ever just gone like down the vortex of like, oh my gosh, how many accounts deep am I right now? This is dark. So really, I mean, and that's the beauty of it, is you can just dig for people. You can just like say, ooh, this is cool, I like what this person's doing. Oh, they tagged this person in this, and you go into the next one, and then you know, you can hop around and you can like people's content. The grind element of it is that it's super time consuming. And so if this is kind of your approach to how you're gonna grow organically and grow followers, it does take time. So it might be like for you as a strategy, you might say, okay, I really wanna cultivate Instagram. Let's just say I'm a jewelry company, and I wanna get outside. I want people in Los Angeles to know about me. I want people in New York to know about me, or Miami is like the perfect place for me. So you might find other jewelry or accessory brands in those markets. You might look at what they're doing. You might look and see, okay, what of their content is doing really well. Whenever they post the ring in the sand by the water, they get tons of comments and tons of likes. Do it. Like, it's not about, what is it? Flattery is, or no, copying is, imitation is the sincere, thank you. Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. There's really nothing wrong about taking those kind of cues. But going back to that, so this person, they do really well, they're in the Miami market, they post these great photos. Start digging into their followers and engaging with them. If you feel like your brand is like theirs, then their audience is going to like your product. And it won't become even on their radar until you interact with them, until you comment on a photo or like something that they've done, and then they go, oh, who's this? And then they click on the profile and they check out your brand, and if they like you, they follow you, or at the very least, they click the link in your bio and check out your website. You would be amazed at how effective that is. So that's the mine and grind. I could talk for 2 hours just about that. And then, as I just mentioned, use your bio link in Instagram to your advantage. So as of right now today, it's pretty tough to drive people out of platform. Instagram stories, if you're a verified Instagram account, which means that you have a blue check mark next to your page, which is hard to do, so I don't expect, if anyone in here is verified, that's amazing. But what that means is you can actually drive people out from Instagram stories, but that's a whole nother layer. Ultimately, you have one opportunity to link, and that is through your bio. And that's why you see a lot of times people say, link in bio. Use it to your advantage. If you are posting a picture of a specific ring, swap out that link in your bio to that specific product on your e-commerce page so that you can say, link in bio, someone jumps there, they click on it, they're all of a sudden to that exact ring on your website, and they can buy it. You have to limit the amount of pages people have to go through, the amount of clicks they have to go through, make it super easy for people. So a little bit time consuming, but very worth it from an e-commerce standpoint. Again, so this is one of our clients, Juice Served Here. It's a juice brand in Los Angeles. A lot of great love in Instagram as a brand. But again, I think it's just really like finding interesting ways to share content. If we launch a new smoothie bowl, as opposed to just showing a bowl of the food, we might try to incorporate a humanistic element or some sort of fun and playfulness. And so that is kind of just the way to think about what kind of content is holistic to platform and what kind of content are people really enjoying on this kind of platform and embracing that. To also give another little shout out to one of our Guam brands, Love from Guam. Really, I think somewhere in this room. Yeah, hi. So I think that she does a really amazing job at kind of balancing, you know, the process in her product, the product themselves, her family even. You really get a sensibility about what the DNA of this brand is and what you're buying. I think that this is a very interesting thing to think about when you think about your positioning on social media. It is, do I want to be an I brand or a we brand? And what I mean by that is, do you want someone to feel like when they're engaging with you on social media, like, I know the person that made that product and I care about it because I know that her blood, sweat, and tears probably went into this, and she's the one managing this account, and she's showing me her personal life. That's an I brand. A we brand would be someone who might say, I might be a one-man show, but I don't want people to know that it's just me. I want them to think that we're a bigger operation, and your tone of voice then becomes we. We are backstage at blah, 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 doing this, which is truly what larger brands are doing. But you will find sometimes that there are one-man shops who operate that way because they want to exude the feeling that they are a bigger operation because that's important to them. So there's a complete positive balance in choosing either one. And I think that this account specifically, you really get a personal feeling. And I think that that's probably a lot of what comes out of Guam in general. And is what makes it so magical, and is probably what will bring a lot of people attracted to these accounts to engage, buy, etc. Pinterest. How many of you are using Pinterest? Yes. Pinterest is my rabbit hole. That is my internet rabbit hole. So the reason why I bring Pinterest up is, well, obviously it's a very powerful platform for any sort of brand or product. But really, it's not a social network in the same way it used to be anymore. So in the way that you might focus on building fans and followers on Facebook and Instagram and some of these other channels, Pinterest, while you can gain followers, is far more powerful as a search platform. So if you think about why you use Pinterest as a user, it is typically when you're planning a party, redesigning a room, getting inspiration for something. I mean, you're building boards of things that inspire you. So what you're doing is you're searching for things that are going to inspire you. You follow brands or people or whatever who you know publish the kinds of content that inspires you regularly, so that's why it gets put in your feed. But I would say do not get distracted in building followers on Pinterest. Focus on making sure that your content is searchable. So what that means is essentially that you're going to be really mindful about your captions. So on Instagram, when you might, or let's go back to the Madewell example, PSA, our XYZ crude shirt is back. That won't necessarily resonate on Pinterest in the way that it would on Facebook. So for Pinterest, it's more about the detail, black and white stripe, long sleeve, crew neck, back in stock, whatever. Because then if I'm searching Pinterest, black and white, long sleeve shirt, I want that pin to come up. So that is really how you should leverage Pinterest, and it can be so powerful at driving people off platform and ultimately driving them to a sale. They also, if any of you guys, do you guys use Shopify here much? Couple, yeah. So Shopify and a couple other e-commerce platforms that allow you to create your e-commerce storefronts or websites, they have a kind of like a buy it element where you can actually activate products in your store on Pinterest. And kind of like the example that you see here, if you do that, there's a buy it button, and essentially it allows people to buy that product direct from Pinterest. So that's a whole nother layer of stuff. But if you are using Pinterest and you are kind of using it through an e-commerce platform, it could be really viable for you. Pinterest, hashtags are optional. We haven't really talked too much about hashtags yet, and we will in a minute, but you don't need hashtags. Every single word in your caption is searchable, so the only time you really need to add a hashtag is if it's something contextual. So it might be something tied to a campaign or a collection name or the event or anything that it might be that would help you search for it or maybe kind of engage your audience to use it. But ultimately, you don't need to do that in terms of being found, which is why hashtags are used primarily on other channels. So unless it's like one of those ones that's kind of long and almost is like, you know, the said in the, you know, you're like, what's the word? Like, sometimes you see a hashtag and it's kind of snarky or sarcastic, or it's giving a little bit more context to a post. And other times you see them, things like, hello, high tide, hi, high tide, hello, high tide, hello, high tide, which is actually meant to create buzz and community and allow people to be like, ooh, what's that? And then find this whole vortex of content that's allowing them to see all the people who are here, what was happening in a total perspective. But a lot of times people do it for that, so that there's this ability to search and there's the ability to find things. So ultimately on Pinterest, you don't need to worry about that too much. And always link. Make sure there's links in your pins, because one of the primary uses of Pinterest is to hop people off platform onto your website or wherever else. So you can see the detail of the product. It's a high quality image. This isn't necessarily one of the most inspirational Pinterest images. There's definitely a lot of that on there, and that's what I tend to gravitate to. But if we're thinking about products specifically, this is a really effective one. And then you can kind of capture the essence of some of the key search terms that somebody might search for on Pinterest for a product like this. Twitter. Twitter in my mind is for Kanye tweets, but you know, it really is an interesting channel for people right now. It is like one of those things, like I feel like you're either on the side of Twitter or off the side of Twitter. Me personally, as someone who manages brands and lifestyle brands, Twitter is not our thing. It's not where people go. It's not visual. It's not really where our communities get cultivated. And so Twitter isn't a big focus for us. But for someone like Jess, or for some like large brands out there, there is a real power in what Twitter can be and what it can do. And there is a place for it. It's just figuring out whether or not it fits into your strategy, as we talked about before. So 360 million users. Twitter's going through a little bit of an interesting time. We don't really know if they're going to make it through. Hopefully they do. They're testing a lot of different things right now, so we'll see. But kind of in retrospect to the Kanye tweets thing, we kind of call it water cooler combo. It's kind of the heartbeat of where you get really fast news and information and things that celebrities are saying and interesting people in the world are saying. And so it really kind of is that thing that kind of causes a ripple effect in conversation, whether with your friends or office or whatever. The nature of Twitter is to post pretty frequently, so if you're someone who isn't necessarily posting all the time, it's going to be hard to build an audience there, because what really causes that virality on Twitter is by retweets and likes and people mentioning you and things like that. So you kind of have to like keep up with all of that, which can be a lot. So if you're kind of coming from the stance of like, I have things to say and I want people to hear them, then Twitter can be really powerful for you and you need to focus a lot of time there. But if you're trying to like push a product or something that's visual, I'm not saying that Twitter is not for you, but it's probably not the best first place to focus in terms of your strategy. There are all sorts of different elements of Twitter while you were away, moments, things like that. Again, that's kind of that algorithm piece where you'll see a tweet from someone that you like tweets from if you weren't online in that moment. Similarly, always make sure to track your clicks, so bit.ly that I talked about before. Again, Twitter, there's only so many characters, so you want to make sure that you take advantage of that and see how many people are actually being driven off Twitter onto your website or whatever it might be. And then typically keep your tweets pretty short. So if it's too long or too broken up, or you're using the letter 4 instead of FOR, like it's totally okay, but where you can, just try to keep your content purposeful. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the power of content itself. It really is about the positioning of your brand. It is super, super important. It is a lot of times where people go first before they even go to your website. And so you want to make sure that that 9-image impression or those first few posts on Facebook or wherever it is that you're actively using social, that you are really giving the best impression that you can. So you need to find your why. I think that this goes actually into some of that exercise that we just did with Jess about like your vision, your values, your mission. If you could take that and apply it to your brand, you will uncover a lot about what channels are going to make sense to help you achieve that mission. It's also going to make you understand, like, why is someone going to follow me? What kind of value am I putting back into this? And you don't need to get so caught up in that where it ever holds you back. It's great to just be out there. Social media is all about, like, putting it out there. Be opening up to community, opening up conversation. Like, it's not about being too precious about what you're doing, because you could take something down in a second if you felt like, actually, that wasn't really what I wanted to do. It's really about experimentation and testing, but you do really need to understand the why behind what you're doing. So one of the cool things about social media right now, especially in terms of content, is because of things like emojis, which is truly a language today. Might not be a language tied to your brand, but for some brands, they are really leveraging emojis as a kind of point of view and a point of voice. But also with Instagram stories, you get this sense of motion and feeling that you weren't getting for the last couple of years, because Instagram made everything so perfect and curated. And now it's just like about real and raw. And truthfully, Snapchat really created that. And it is super exciting because it allows you to tell stories for your brand that you might not have been able to do before through one static image. And I mean, even if you look at Vera Wang, you know, an amazing fashion designer, this picture isn't like the most beautiful picture we've ever seen, and she's a very beautiful brand. It's really like, I'm here, I'm doing this with her, I'm backstage, whatever. It doesn't have to be so like fashion week, but you know, it's interesting for people, let's just say from Los Angeles or New York, being able to experience Guam through the eyes of your social media stories is going to be really interesting. This is a beautiful place. We don't have access to a lot of islands like this. That makes it super special, and be like just down to share those stories. Another thing that always does really well in social is memes and quotes. And these are two examples of ones that we've done for brands. One which was a really playful women's brand that we could have a lot of fun with what we said. This was actually one post. This all I care about is pasta and like 3 people. This was actually a post that we used for a giveaway. So we had people tag the 3 people in the comments that they felt applied to that to be entered to win a gift card to the brand. And we got thousands and thousands of comments. And this brand isn't super, super big, but that's a virality component. So you make someone laugh, you're like, oh my God, totes, like, I know exactly my girlfriend's. And so it is like, people are just like, yeah. And then you get some action from that. Or you have the other example here, which is a little bit more serious. I mean, this is a Frank Gehry quote. The brand is really kind of this blend of nature meets industrial. And so this made sense, and it was beautiful, and it spoke to that audience in a way that was something that they connected with. So it's really just finding that tone of voice again and figuring out how to apply that into your content. There we go. So just a quick background on my agency and how we approach content. When I started my agency a little over 4 years ago, it was right when Instagram was starting to make sense for brands. So yes, it had already been around for people, but now it was like brands were really starting to take part. And I knew that, you know, I wanted to be able to continue servicing brands in social media and driving those strategies, but I also knew that I had to help them create the kind of content that you need to create to speak to an Instagram audience specifically. And yes, to other social channels as well, but Instagram was what we were really focused on. And so when I started the agency, I just decided, we're going to do it. What we're going to do is we're going to hire a photographer every week to shoot for our clients. I found a young photographer. I think I paid him $100 a shoot. Our clients got 15 images out of every shoot, and we were able to use it across our social, and we were able to add our point of view and art direction and feeling to what we did. And that really helped drive us as a business, and has now led to us having our own studio, and we're doing high-level creative work. But truthfully, it all comes from just that sense of like, just doing it. Like, to quote Nike, just do it. If you're not good at taking photos, that's totally okay. There's probably somebody who wants to build their portfolio or really knows how to use certain iPhone apps that make your photo look like $1 million. And you should leverage those people and or learn from them, because it really will go a long way in terms of the positioning of your brand. And also, I would suggest, I mean, in our thinking when we would do these shoots, we would say, okay, we know what our calendar looks like for social. We know what we need to capture and talk about, and we would just plow it out in like an hour. And then we had it all, and then it's done. And you have a folder full of great images, and you can publish when you need to, so you're not feeling that scurrying moment of like, ooh, what am I gonna post today? If you be really thoughtful about it and you put aside the time, even if it's just you and your iPhone and a table, it can really go a long way in terms of you always feeling empowered on a daily basis to have the tools and the assets you need to have something to say visually. And if you don't, there are so many amazing stock photography sites out there that aren't the courage leap across the rocks quality. There are some really, really awesome ones, Stocksy being one of them, and 2020 being another one. And these are basically user-based. These are photographers and Instagrammers and people out there who are taking really beautiful photos and basically allowing people to license them for as little as $10. So if you don't feel like you have something that you can say that speaks to a certain post or something that's like time sensitive or relevant, these platforms are a really great way to get images that you can use fully licensed across social and digital for very little and feel like they're very cool images. So I use these all the time. Yeah, so stocksy.com, STOCKSY.com, and then 2020, so 20 spelled out, and then the number 20.com. Join a narrative. So this is where I think hashtags are the most powerful, is the ability to join a conversation. So I think today, everyone who's using hashtag #HelloHighTide, if you don't know each other and you walk out of this room and you maybe only meet 5 new people, you can scour that hashtag later and like literally do the digi-dig on all these people, see what they're up to, comment and be like, hey, I was at High Tide today too, that was so awesome, we should connect and have a coffee, I love what you're doing. That is truly, in my eyes, the power of a hashtag. It is also a contextual thing. Sometimes it has to do with a certain location or a certain product name or a million of other things. But the opportunity to connect around a similar, like-minded sensibility is really where I think the power lies. And these are just 2 hashtags, one being Find It, Live It, the other being That's Darling. There are tons out there, But First Coffee, I don't know, tons and tons and tons. And when you sift through these hashtag kind of feeds, you're basically being exposed to tons of people all around the world who are creating a similar like-minded sense of content that either could become new followers for you, could become new friends for you, could basically influence the kind of content you want to create, could be the next kind of pool of followers that you're going to do the mine and grind on. But it is a really contextual environment and a great place to start just to kind of get influence and kind of get a sense of direction. Find It, Live It is all about travel and exploration and adventure. So if you're a travel brand, if your brand in any way makes sense to that kind of sensibility, this is a great pool for you. That's Darling is an amazing platform, a magazine really, and a digital platform for women based out of Los Angeles. And they have a really strong message behind them, and you find a ton of women, from bloggers to photographers to everyday women that are in here posting really beautiful moments that they capture in the sensibility of That's Darling. It's a sentiment, right? And so it's a great pool of people to tap into. So that's really where I think the power of a hashtag comes from. And I think that it can be a huge advantage. Hashtags, there's really no right or wrong. Make sure to add them to your posts when it's relevant. It's going to allow your content to get seen. You'll show up in this funnel. Somebody else might find you. And therefore, you're basically marketing your business or your brand or your identity. So use them wherever you can. It's the most powerful on platforms like Instagram and Twitter. Hashtags aren't super trendy on Facebook. I don't know how many of you actually like dig into the vortex of posts from hashtags on Facebook. It does do a decent job, but it's not nearly as like visually impactful as some of these other platforms. Another great thing is to let other people create for you. And so what this means is if you're basically in a position where you don't like to take photos, you're too busy, you don't really know how to visually position your brand in the right way, you don't necessarily have the budget to hire a photographer or anything like that, I totally get it, and so many people are in that position. The one thing you can always do is lean on other people. It could be your friends. You might have a friend who takes really beautiful photos, and you're like, hey, can I give you like 5 of my pieces in exchange for you just taking my stuff, shooting a bunch of photos, and letting me use them across digital? That is something that a ton of people would love to do. Product has value. It's the same thing with like influencers. I don't know how much influencer marketing happens here in the States. It's massive. And sometimes we work with brands that don't have money to pay people that have audiences. But what we can do is find value in a like-minded synergy. If it's a product that we know that this person might like because she always posts things that are pink, or loves, you know, rose gold products, like how can we find a way to basically do a barter with her in exchange for a couple of posts that we can then use on our own channels? We do this all the time with our brands, all the time, even the biggest brands. We're not always just paying people to do things. Sometimes it really is about a brand synergy and looking to someone, whether or not they have an audience, and identifying that their eye is what you see, being fully aligned with your brand and leveraging that. So that's definitely something to really think about and use to your advantage, especially if you have something that you can trade, whether it's your time, a product, or whatever it might be. Ultimately, though, with it all, your content does need to perform. And so we talked a little bit about your engagement. So engagement is just simply your likes and your followers combined. The number is always going to be saddeningly low. So ultimately, if you kind of use this as a barometer, if you're getting 1% engagement on your content, it's good. Like, it's not bad, especially for a brand. Individuals and people and talent and influencers, they have higher numbers because people like people. Social media is really about people and connecting and being inspired and all these things. And sometimes brands to people just feel like an ad platform, like you're just talking about your product all the time, and why would they want to be exposed to that as much? So it tends to be a little bit lower for brands, but all you need to do is basically just take your total likes and your total comments and divide it by your total followers, and that's where you get your percentages. And this is kind of like a good rule of thumb. If your engagement is high, then you're doing it right, and just be persistent. If your engagement is low, think about why that might be, or look at specific posts that you publish and say, okay, that one got 46 likes, this one got 22, this one got 28, this one got 15, that one that's 46, what can I learn from it? Was there something about the lighting? Was it something that, like the environment? Was it because my kid was in it? Because we all love photos of kids and babies. Think about those things and figure out how you can take that intel and apply it. And then lastly, we kind of talked about paid. Paid media is a huge thing in social media right now. It's kind of unfortunate, to be honest. It's a big part of what we do in social media because it's hard to market your content today. But there are all kinds of Facebook and Instagram and Pinterest and Twitter advertising out there. The one thing I will say is that it can be $5 a month if you only want it to be $5 a month. So you don't have to look at it as it being some costly expense. Obviously, the more you put into it, the more return you're going to see. But it's really good to test things out and see, if I publish an ad with this photo and this caption, will it do better than if I post a photo of this photo with this caption? And then what can you learn from that? Okay, photos with the ocean in them, I get way more click-throughs on that ad and people buying products. Photos of my product against a pastel color background don't perform as well. So just looking at that simple intel is all you need. It's really not that complicated, and then you can figure out where to throw your spend. You can figure out, okay, maybe I'll increase it to $15 a month, or maybe I'll increase it to $5,000 a month because I'm seeing 3 times return on that spend. Social media advertising is incredibly powerful, and it really will drive revenue for your business if you kind of figure out and do some testing as to what's going to be the most fruitful for you. This is another thing I could talk about for 2 hours. But ultimately, just for your own sense of understanding, there are really 3 types of social media advertising. It's fan advertising, engagement advertising, and web advertising. Fan advertising is when you're paying for followers. So that would be you saying, I want more likes to my Facebook page, so I'm going to have Facebook promote my page. And that's just those ads that you see in Facebook where it's like, kind of like the screenshot of what the Facebook page looks like and a like button. Then you have engagement-based advertising, which is when you might boost a post, or you might publish a specific post through the ad platform. And what that's focused on doing is getting that specific post out to as many people as possible. And the last one is web-based. So web would be me saying, I'm just going to run ads that are going to drive people to my website. I don't care about people liking my page. I don't really care if they like this post or not. I just need people to go to my website. My point of advice for you would be to focus on engagement and web. Focusing on likes is hopefully what comes from people seeing your content because they want more. as I'm sure a lot of you have felt with Facebook and also with Instagram, it's harder and harder to build those fan bases, but actually have those fan bases convert, which is that whole like, oh, I have 100,000 followers on Facebook and 3 people like my post. It's because of the algorithm. It's because of things that are out of your control. So paying for those eyeballs that may or may not see your posts and your content going forward isn't necessarily the best spend in the beginning. So I would just say focus on building your content and getting it in front of more people, and focusing on getting people to your website if that's something that's important to you. And that is all I have today, because there's so much to cover.
So Chelsea, we're gonna do some Q&A, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna actually ask you a few questions real quick, because I think these are mostly what other people will ask, and we can zip through these really fast. Okay, so a common question that I get asked a lot too is how many hashtags are appropriate, not appropriate, when does it get crazy time, and that kind of thing?
Totally. So it varies by channel. Statistically, 11 hashtags on Facebook is what will create the most growth, but I think that ends up becoming a ton of gibberish. And I don't think that it's quality followers. It's just putting you in a bunch of different pools of stuff. So I would say that 2 to 3 hashtags is a really sweet spot, pretty much for most channels. I mean, Twitter, the sweet spot is 2. You don't have a ton to say in Twitter, so bulking it up with all these hashtags makes it become just like kind of gibberish. Facebook, as we mentioned before, hashtags don't really help you. They aren't really helping you grow. They're not really putting you into these discovery pools like Instagram and Twitter do. So it's kind of more up to your judgment. I would say keep it really lean if you are using hashtags, just because it's kind of distracting from your post. But the sweet spot on Instagram for growth is 11 statistically.
Okay. And then you mentioned talking about, link in bio. So how often should somebody change that? Do you keep it if it's just like, for example, Zori's Only, who also is a apparel brand and card. So would you, like if we have a sale or a new product, how often would you change
I would change it out as often as is relevant. So like every day, every hour.
Okay.
If you're posting every hour, but don't feel pressured by that. If you don't have something that needs to drive to something specifically, just keep it as your website address, or keep it as your latest press hit or something like that. We try to keep it super contextual in terms of the post itself, so that you can see the correlation. You can understand like, okay, that post that I did on Instagram actually did drive 50 people to that specific product page and converted to X amount in sales, because you can see that from your back end.
Okay, and then I'm going to ask one more, and then we're going to open it up. You talked about influencer marketing being huge. Maybe explain a little bit what that means, because I think that people would like to hear about that.
Cool. Have any of you guys worked with influencers in any way? Well, there's one in the room.
There's one in the room. Kelly, Mrs. Lillian is an influencer.
Yeah.
Well, explain what an influencer is, and kind of, because locally, like you guys, Crowns Guam would be an influencer here, for example. So because they have a huge one. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. An influencer ultimately equates to an audience. So if somebody has 15,000 followers on Instagram, if they have 500,000 followers on Instagram, they effectively have a larger audience than you potentially, and therefore you want to leverage them to build brand awareness. That would be an influencer, but there's all different elements of influencers today. I mean, you have photographers who have built large audiences, you have tastemakers, you have entrepreneurs and CEOs of companies. Effectively, it does end up becoming a numbers game, and that's what you kind of look to it for. But there is a shift in the space in terms of focusing on more kind of niche influencers and people who actually have a really targeted group of followers, so that you can really understand what you're getting. But that is essentially an influencer. So it started from blogging, was really, I think, the rise of influencers. People who were bloggers had media platforms that you could send them your product or tell them about your event or whatever it was, and they would hopefully post about it, and then you would get links back to your site. Then that evolved into Instagram, and then you have people who are just solely Instagram influencers because they've built an audience there. They might have no blog or no website whatsoever, and you leverage them for that, and so on and so forth. Yeah.
So how can Pico's Cafe, since people know that, and she's right there, work with an influencer who might be just somebody who's a local blogger, or?
So an influencer in that case would be, it might be a food writer, you know, for a local media. It might be somebody who does have a decent audience like Crowns. You might want to invite their team in to enjoy a meal on you in exchange for them posting on their own channel, tagging your page, using your hashtag, whatever it might be. So really, it's just kind of like, in an environment where you're a restaurant or something, it's about getting people into your restaurant and trying your food and then talking about it. So in whatever means their platform is, it would either be a photo, maybe it's a video, a written story. That would kind of be the approach. Yeah. Any questions? Yeah.
Do you mind just clarifying the tracking, the way you said to track websites? Like,
Yes.
You can
So
put that on any platform?
yeah, so it's actually its own website. It's just bit.ly.com. And you basically create an account. It's free. And then any time that you want to link to something in your social posts, you just you go to bit.ly.com, drop the link in, and then it would shorten it for you and basically immediately make it trackable. So then you would just pull the code that it gives you, or the URL that it gives you, add it into your post, and then you're done. But what you do is anytime you go back to bit.ly.com, you go to the statistics section, and you can see like, oh, that link, and it show you how many people like clicked on it and some other interesting insights. You can pull like monthly reports, all sorts of stuff. So it's super easy. Yeah.
So this is in reference to putting the link to an actual product in your Instagram account. If on the photo, for example, I have a necklace and I say link above, and I post it to that specific piece, when I post my earrings, do I have to go back to the necklace and erase the link above because the next one is now a different link?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So it's a little bit time intensive right now. I will let you guys know that shoppable Instagram is around the corner. So that is definitely something that like we're focusing on. It's already launched with certain like big brands, but the idea is that it's going to become something that floods through for everyone, to where like the same way that you tag a friend in a post, you'd be able to tag a product and link it back to a specific link. And so you wouldn't have to change your bio all the time. You could actually link things to drive to your website in the post, which is going to be insane. But yes, it's a little labor of love in the meantime. Anyone else? There's some questions over there.
Thanks so much. This has been just really eye-opening. But one of the questions I have is, if you like come back 30,000 feet, when you're thinking about a brand or a particular product, if you know that you're going to have days and a lot of time to post pictures or to develop a message, can you talk a little bit about maybe your personal approach to knowing whether to focus on a particular attribute of one SKU or an emotion of the brand, or like how do you begin?
Yeah, so it's an awesome question. From the brand level, outside of just social media, we really focus on what the emotional attributes of the brand might be. So that can be down to like kind of starting with the like logistical details. Oh, we know it's, handmade. We know that it's made with the best quality materials, or all those kind of attributes. And then you can think about, I think it's, similar to kind of what Jess was extracting, which is just really like, but what does that make you feel? Like, what is the importance of that? Is there an importance in community in the kind of products that you buy? Then how do you use the word community in your brand messaging? And so that really starts from like the top. And then you allow that to flood through all of your posts and all of your creative. So I'll give you guys an example. With Juice Served Here, again, a juice brand in Los Angeles, our slogan for the company is never conventional. But on a quarterly basis, we'll think about, what do we really want to talk about this quarter? And this should flood through all our marketing channels. And what we landed on was an elevated health experience. There's reasons for that. Elevated is because the product is expensive. Elevated is because it's chic. Elevated is because it's innovative. So there's all these kind of things, but it's an elevated health experience. And then from that, it really drove our creative. It really drives a lot of our messaging. We use the word elevated in a lot of our captions. We did a photo shoot where the bottles were levitating. Sounds weird, but actually came out cool. But I think that's really where you kind of think like, what are my messages from a brand level, but also from a weekly level, quarterly level, really comes from that emotional standpoint. I think the other piece of it too is kind of going back to that, like, am I an I brand or a we brand? And really kind of like sticking to your guns on that. Do you want it to feel community, handmade, this is me making it and that's what you're buying into? Or do you want people to feel like, oh, this is a site that I can trust because they've probably got 50 people behind the scenes there making it happen, when it really might just be 3. So I think that's really what drives kind of the tone of voice and just the daily captions and the kind of creative and positioning.